At family dinner, Dad asked, "Did the money help?" When I said, "What money?" he froze. I turned to Mom. She couldn't even fake it. She'd rerouted everything without saying a word. Can you imagine a single, casual question utterly shattering everything you thought you knew about your family? One moment, I was just Stephanie, 28, passing the gravy boat at our monthly family dinner. The next, my dad asked about the money, and our entire meticulously constructed facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing a web of secrets that cut me to the bone. For years, I'd been living this fiercely independent life in Boston. After college, I fled my Vermont hometown, desperate to prove I could make it on my own, far from what felt like my mom, Karen's, subtle judgments, and the unspoken competition with my older brother, Jason. My dad, Thomas, built his construction company from nothing, and I was supposed to follow suit, but I carved my own path in finance. Our family was, on the surface, the picture of stability. Dad, the proud, practical provider. Mom, the quintessential homemaker. Jason, the golden child who stayed close and joined the family business. But beneath the surface, there was always this hum, a quiet tension I couldn't quite decipher as a kid. We Wilsons had a toxic superpower, keeping secrets. We avoided conflict until it became a catastrophe, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Then, 6 months ago, my carefully built world collapsed. My investment firm went through a brutal restructuring, and despite stellar performance, I was laid off. The timing? Horrific. I'd just signed a lease on a pricier apartment and bought a new car. But pride, it's a dangerous thing. I couldn't bear to be the failure crawling back home. So, during our weekly calls, I lied. I told them I was transitioning to a new opportunity, while in reality, I was hemorrhaging savings. I had to make drastic cuts. My beautiful downtown apartment? Sublet. I moved into a tiny studio in a neighborhood where the windows rattled when trucks passed, and my upstairs neighbor seemed to practice river dancing at midnight. My barely driven car? Sold. I was suddenly on the bus, selling designer clothes, and eating a depressing parade of ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. What nobody knew was the physical toll, too. The stress triggered debilitating migraines, sometimes leaving me bedridden for days. Without insurance, the medication was insanely expensive, but I couldn't afford not to take them if I wanted to function for job interviews. So, when I pulled up to my parents' beautiful colonial for our monthly dinner, a tradition Mom started after I moved to Boston, I was a wreck, but I was determined to hide it. Jason and his wife, Megan, pregnant with their first, living the perfect life, were already there. As we greeted each other, I noticed Jason couldn't quite meet my eyes, and Megan was being overly nice, asking about my apartment and job with a strange intensity. I brushed it off as pregnancy hormones, but looking back, the signs were screaming. From the moment I walked in, something felt off. Mom hugged me a beat too long, her eyes scanning my face. "Have you lost weight?" she asked, a crease of concern on her forehead. I forced a laugh, mumbling about quarterly reviews. The lie was easy now, second nature. But cheaper groceries and stress had made my clothes looser. As we moved to the living room, Mom kept disappearing into the kitchen, returning each time with a more strained smile, endlessly rearranging the untouched appetizer platter. "So, Steph, how's that fancy office of yours?" Jason probed, swirling his whiskey. "Still have that view of the harbor?" I nodded, taking a huge gulp of wine. "It's great. Nothing changes." Another lie. I hadn't seen that office in months, and the company had actually moved before the layoffs. Mom suddenly dropped a coaster, flinching at the small noise, her hands shaking slightly. Dad, bless him, was oblivious, droning on about a difficult client. But Mom kept shooting him nervous glances. Every time a financial topic came up, like Jason and Megan's new restaurant or baby expenses, Mom would frantically change the subject. The tension was thick, palpable. The dining room was set with Mom's best china, usually reserved for holidays. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "No occasion," Mom replied, too quickly. Just felt like using them. Megan and Jason kept exchanging these meaningful looks, like they were having a silent conversation. Dad cleared his throat repeatedly, his nervous habit since childhood. "So, Stephanie," he began, passing the salad, "Jason tells me Boston real estate is getting even more expensive. Your neighborhood's still treating you well." I crammed salad into my mouth to avoid elaborating. My new neighborhood had already had 2 break-ins on my block. You know, if you ever wanted to come back home for a while, your room is always available, Mom interjected, not meeting my eyes. My stomach tightened. I'm fine, Mom. Really. My career is in Boston. When the conversation turned to my cousin Eliza's destination wedding in Hawaii, completely out of my budget, I reluctantly admitted I might not make it, blaming work projects. But your family, Mom protested. Eliza would be heartbroken. We could help with the flight, Dad offered casually. Consider it an early Christmas gift. No thanks, I said, firm. I can handle my own expenses. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Jason raised an eyebrow at Megan, who suddenly became very interested in buttering her roll. The small talk became increasingly strained. Dad, who never cared, asked about my investments. Mom kept refilling my wine, insisting I take seconds, then thirds of everything. Jason made an odd comment about how communication is important in families that seem to come out of nowhere. With each passing minute, the air grew heavier, charged like before a thunderstorm. Everyone seemed to be waiting. And then, as I reached for the salt, it happened. Dad was passing the mashed potatoes, his weathered hands steady. There was a lull in conversation. That's when he asked it, casual as commenting on the weather, but with words that would crack our family's very foundation. So, Steph, he said, his voice light, has the money been helping with your situation? Karen mentioned you might need a bit more next month. Time seemed to slow. The bowl of potatoes hovered. Asterisk money? What money? What situation had Mom told him about? Asterisk, what money? I asked, genuinely confused. The change in the room was immediate, dramatic. Dad's hand froze mid-pass, his face draining of color, eyes widening in shocked realization. He looked like someone who'd just stepped on a landmine and heard the click. I turned to Mom. Her water glass stopped halfway to her lips, a small tremor rippling across its surface. Her face, usually so composed, so ready with a deflecting smile, crumbled. I saw it, that flash of panic, guilt, and something else, fear. Karen, Dad's voice had dropped an octave, a question, a warning, embedded in just her name. Mom set her glass down with exaggerated care, like it might explode. I just meant the care package, she attempted weakly. The one I sent with the homemade granola and those socks you liked. The excuse was paper thin. Dad's furrowed brow and tight jaw made it clear he wasn't buying it. Jason and Megan exchanged loaded glances. My brother's hand moved to cover his wife's, a gesture of solidarity that only confirmed my terrifying suspicion. Everyone at this table knew something I didn't. Mom, I said, my voice sounding strange, distant. What money is Dad talking about? The silence that followed was deafening. The refrigerator hummed, the grandfather clock ticked, suddenly intrusive. It's nothing, really, Mom finally stammered, her voice unnaturally high. She reached for the green beans, knocking over the salt shaker. Oh, clumsy me. Let's just enjoy dinner, shall we? I made your favorite chocolate cake for dessert. Dad set the potato bowl down with deliberate slowness. Karen, he said again, unmistakable warning in his tone. What have you been doing? Mom's facade finally cracked. Her hand flew to her throat. Thomas, please, not now, she whispered. Yes, now. I insisted, my confusion morphing into a cold anger. What money? Has someone been sending me money? My heart hammered. Dad's face had shifted to profound disappointment. Jason was dissecting his pot roast into tiny pieces. I think, Megan said softly, that you all need to talk about this. Mom's chair scraped harshly as she bolted for the kitchen. Mom, I called, but she was gone. Dad put his head in his hands, then looked up, his eyes suddenly older, wearier. Stephanie, he said quietly, I think your mother has been keeping secrets from both of us. The perfect family dinner had become unrecognizable in seconds. With one question, the illusion shattered. I pushed back from the table, my appetite gone. I'm going to talk to Mom. As I walked, I heard Jason murmur to Dad, I told her this would happen eventually. Whatever this was, I was about to find out. I pushed through the swinging door to find Mom rearranging perfectly aligned dessert plates, her hands trembling. Mom, I said firmly, look at me. She fussed with plates. The cake needs a few more minutes. My voice was sharper than I intended, but it worked. She stopped, turning, though her eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder. What money was Dad talking about? It's nothing, sweetheart. Just a misunderstanding. Her fingers pleated and unpleated her apron. Don't do that, I snapped, my frustration boiling. Don't pretend this is nothing when it's big enough to make everyone act like we're at a funeral. The door swung open again. Dad entered, his expression grave, his confident posture diminished. Karen, he said quietly. Tell her. Mom's face crumpled. She sank into a kitchen chair. I was just trying to help, she whispered. Dad moved to stand beside me. How much have you been sending her, Karen? $2,000 a month, Mom admitted, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Since May. The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. $2,000? Every month? That's $10,000. Where would you even get that kind of money? $12,000 actually, Mom corrected, still not looking at me. I sent a little extra in July for your birthday. Dad's sharp intake of breath told me that was news to him too. From where, Karen? We don't have that kind of disposable income. Mom's eyes finally met mine, filled with tears and desperate love. I sold my mother's jewelry. The antique collection we were saving for your wedding someday. And some of the silver. Grandma's jewelry? I whispered, stunned. Those were family heirlooms. Mom had spoken of them with reverence, promised they'd be mine. You sold family heirlooms without discussing it with me? Dad's voice had taken on a dangerous quietness. I didn't think you'd understand, Mom replied, a hint of defiance. Our daughter needed help. I didn't ask for help. I exclaimed, my shock giving way to pure anger. I never even knew about this money. How were you sending it? Direct deposits to your checking account, Mom said. I set it up through the bank. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. There they were. Monthly deposits, labeled only as a credit. I'd assumed they were delayed bonuses or expense reimbursements from my old job, never questioning it because I'd been so desperate for the money. Why didn't you tell me? My voice broke. You're so proud, Stephanie, Mom said, wiping a tear. You wouldn't accept help even when we offered directly. Remember your car repairs last year? Or your rent increase? You always say you're fine. The door swung open again. Jason, grim-faced. She knew, by the way, he said, gesturing to Mom. About you losing your job. She's known for months. I felt like I'd been slapped. How? Eliza told me, Mom admitted. She saw you coming out of an unemployment office when she was in Boston. So, you've all been lying to me? Pretending you didn't know I was struggling while secretly sending me money. The betrayal cut deep. And you knew too? I asked Jason. He nodded slowly. Mom asked me not to say anything. She said it would just embarrass you. And you were okay with her selling family heirlooms? With lying to Dad, Jason had the grace to look uncomfortable. I told her it wasn't right. That's why I've been helping her with some of the money for the past 2 months. Dad's head snapped up. You've been giving your mother money to send to Stephanie? Someone had to, Jason retorted, after Mom ran out of things to sell. She was talking about taking out a loan against the house. A loan against the... Dad couldn't even finish. He sank into a chair opposite Mom, looking utterly defeated. Karen, how could you make these decisions without me? You would have said no, Mom replied simply. And Stephanie needed help. You don't know that I would have said no. Dad argued, his voice rising. You didn't give me the chance. Like you told me about the business problems? Mom shot back, unexpectedly. Dad went very still. What are you talking about? The second mortgage you took out on the house last year, the credit card bills. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I watched, astonished, as my parents stared at each other like strangers. Jason leaned against the door frame, looking utterly unsurprised. The business had a temporary cash flow issue, Dad said stiffly. It's resolved now. See? Mom threw up her hands. This is why I didn't tell you about helping Stephanie. You don't tell me when there are problems either. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My seemingly solid, stable family was built on quicksand. We were all keeping secrets, all pretending, all afraid to be vulnerable. I checked my account every day, I said quietly, drawing their attention back. I saw those deposits. I thought they were from work. I never even questioned it because I needed that money so badly. Tears welled. Do you know what that's like? To be so desperate that when money mysteriously appears, you don't question it, you're just relieved you can pay rent. Mom stood, tried to approach me, but I backed away. Why didn't you just ask me? Why the secrecy? Would you have taken it if you knew it came from selling my mother's jewelry? Mom asked gently. The truth was I wouldn't have. My pride would have prevented it, even as my electricity was about to be shut off. That wasn't your decision to make, I said finally. You took away my choice. I'm your mother, she replied, as if that explained everything. I couldn't watch you suffer. So instead, you lied. You all lied. I looked around at my family, Mom, with her desperate need to help, Dad, with his hidden business troubles, Jason, complicit in the deception. We're supposed to be a family. We are a family, Dad said wearily. A family with serious communication problems, apparently. The chocolate cake sat forgotten on the counter, its perfect frosting a mockery of our imperfect family. This was a turning point. We would either break apart completely or be forced to rebuild something more honest from the ruins. We migrated back to the dining room in silent agreement, dinner growing cold. The air was heavy with unspoken words. I think, Dad said, breaking the oppressive silence, it's time we all put our cards on the table. No more secrets. Jason cleared his throat. While we're being honest, I have something to say, too. He glanced at Megan, who nodded encouragingly. I've resented how Mom always seems to make excuses for Stephanie. It's always been that way. When she moved to Boston, when she misses family events, and now this secret money. I've worked alongside Dad for years, building this company, staying close to home, doing everything right. And still, somehow, Stephanie gets this special treatment. That's not true. Mom protested weakly. It is true, Jason insisted. You sold Grandma's jewelry for her. Jewelry that's been in the family for generations. Meanwhile, when Megan and I needed help with the down payment on our house, you gave us a loan with a repayment schedule and interest. I stared at my brother, genuinely surprised. I never asked for special treatment. You didn't have to, he replied bitterly. You were always Mom's favorite. Jason, Mom exclaimed. It's okay, Karen, Dad interjected, tired. If we're clearing the air, let's really clear it. He turned to Jason. Your mother has always worried more about Stephanie because she saw herself in her, independent, determined. And you've always been more like me, practical, rooted in family. We connected differently with each of you. That doesn't mean we love one more than the other. I tried to process this while still reeling from my mother's secret. I still don't understand why there was so much secrecy. Why couldn't we just talk to each other? Because that's not what Wilsons do, Dad said, with unexpected bitterness. We don't discuss problems. We fix them quietly and move on. Or pretend to fix them, Mom added quietly. Dad looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Mom's hands twisted in her lap. It means there are things we haven't talked about for years, Thomas. Important things. Like the fact that your father and I have been sleeping in separate bedrooms for the past year. The revelation hit like a physical blow. My parents, a united front, separated? Why? I managed to ask. Because your mother keeps making unilateral decisions without consulting me. Dad said, frustration evident. Like selling family heirlooms or sending thousands of dollars to you behind my back. And because your father works constantly and hasn't really seen me in years. Mom countered, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. He's physically present, but mentally always at the construction site. I work to provide for this family. Dad's fist came down on the table. We don't need provisions, Thomas. We need you. Mom's voice broke. Megan, silent until now, placed her hand gently on the table. I think what we're seeing here is a pattern, she said softly. Everyone in this family is afraid to admit when they need help or when something's wrong. You're also afraid of appearing vulnerable that you've created this web of secrets instead. Her words hung in the air, uncomfortable but undeniably true. I didn't tell anyone about losing my job because I was ashamed, I admitted, my voice small. I thought I was supposed to be the successful one, proving that leaving home was the right choice. And I didn't tell you I knew because I was afraid you'd push me away completely if I offered help directly, Mom said. You've always been so independent. Even as a little girl, you never wanted help. I didn't tell anyone about the business difficulties because I'm supposed to be the provider. The Rock, Dad added quietly. And I never said anything about feeling second best because complaining seemed ungrateful when we have so much, Jason concluded. Silence. Generations of poor communication, laid bare. My parents were the same way, Mom finally said. My father lost his job when I was 12, but they pretended everything was fine for months. When we finally lost the house, it was a complete shock. I promised myself I'd never let my children experience that kind of sudden devastation. So instead, you created a different kind of deception, I observed, not unkindly. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. My father was the same, Dad added. Never talked about problems. When he got sick, he hid it until he collapsed. By then, the cancer had spread. The pieces were falling into place. Our family's dysfunction was inherited, passed down like an heirloom, more enduring than grandma's jewelry. So, what do we do now? Jason asked, his anger replaced by vulnerability. How do we break the cycle? We start by telling the truth, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. The whole truth, no matter how uncomfortable. I took a deep breath. I've been having debilitating migraines for months from the stress. Sometimes I can't get out of bed for days. The medication costs a fortune without insurance, but without it, I can't function enough to job hunt effectively. My business partner wants to buy me out, Dad confessed. The company isn't doing well. Hasn't been for years. I've been working 70-hour weeks trying to keep it afloat. I've been thinking about going back to teaching, Mom said. I love you all, but I need something that's just mine. I feel invisible sometimes. Megan and I have been in couples therapy for 6 months, Jason admitted. The baby wasn't planned, and we've been struggling to adjust to the idea. One by one, we unloaded our burdens, our fears, our secret struggles. With each confession, the air seemed to clear a little more, making room for something new. Something honest. Painful, yes, but ultimately healthier than the comfortable lies we'd been living. As our revelations exhausted themselves, a strange calm settled. The fancy china was untouched, food cold, and forgotten. I think we should move to the living room, Dad suggested, his voice hoarse from talking more openly in the past hour than he probably had in years. We migrated silently, exhausted. I don't know whether to be angry or grateful, I finally said, curling up on the sofa. Part of me is furious that you went behind my back, that you all knew I was struggling and pretended not to. But another part recognizes that without that money, I might be homeless right now. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. I never meant to betray your trust, Stephanie. I couldn't bear knowing you were in trouble and doing nothing. But you took away my agency, I said. My right to make my own choices, even if those choices were bad ones. You're right, she acknowledged, a difficult admission for her. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself from the pain of seeing you struggle. Dad leaned forward. I think we all need to acknowledge that our intentions, however good, created this mess. Your mother shouldn't have sent money behind everyone's backs, but Stephanie, you shouldn't have hidden your job loss either. I know, I admitted. Pride is expensive. What happens now? Jason asked, the question we were all thinking. Do we just go back to pretending? No, Dad said firmly. We can't unring this bell. And honestly, I don't want to. Neither do I, Mom agreed. As painful as this is, it feels like finally lancing a wound that's been festering for years. I think we need some ground rules, I suggested. New family agreements. Like honesty. Real honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable. If I'm struggling, I'll tell you. But in return, I need you all to respect my independence, offer help directly, and accept my answer, even if it's no. That seems fair, Dad nodded. And I need to know that help doesn't come with strings attached, I continued. Not from any of you. The money was never about controlling you, Mom protested. Maybe not consciously, I acknowledged. But there's a power dynamic in secret giving. You knew something I didn't. You were influencing my life without my knowledge or consent. Mom was quiet, then nodded slowly. I can see that now. I have a suggestion, Megan offered. Jason and I have found our therapy really helpful. Maybe family counseling would give you all a safe space. Dad's immediate frown told me his thoughts, but to my surprise, he didn't dismiss it outright. Maybe, he said reluctantly. I'm not big on talking to strangers about family business, but clearly we haven't been handling things well on our own. I'd be willing to try it, Mom said, relieved. Me too, I agreed. But in the meantime, I want to talk about the money. Everyone tensed. I'll pay it back, I said firmly. Every penny, once I'm working again. Absolutely not. Mom insisted. It was a gift. A gift I didn't know I was receiving, I pointed out. Besides, that money came from family heirlooms that should have stayed in the family. The jewelry was meant for you eventually anyway, Mom said. Not like this, I insisted. Not sold off piece by piece in secret. What if we compromise? Dad suggested. Stephanie, when you're back on your feet, you don't repay the money directly. Instead, you start a savings account for your own future children or to replace the heirloom someday. The suggestion resonated. It wasn't about the money, but what it represented: family legacy, support, continuity. I could do that, I agreed quietly. And in the meantime, Jason said, surprisingly, if you need help while job hunting, I might be able to offer you some contract work for the company. Just until you find something permanent. No special treatment, regular pay for regular work. I looked at my brother, seeing a genuine olive branch. I'd appreciate that. And I'll be direct about what we can and can't afford to help with, Mom promised. No more secret support. If you're really in trouble, Dad added, we want to know. Not so we can fix it for you, but so we can support you while you fix it yourself. The conversation continued late into the night. We talked about boundaries and expectations, communication styles. We made plans for weekly family calls where everyone would share one challenge they were facing. Dad reluctantly agreed to 3 sessions of family therapy. As exhaustion set in, Megan, now visibly tired, asked the unspoken question. So, what about tomorrow and the next day? How do we make sure we don't slip back into old patterns? One day at a time, Mom said simply. And we hold each other accountable, I added, gently but firmly. As Jason and Megan prepared to leave, my brother pulled me aside. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for resenting you all these years. I should have just talked to you. And I'm sorry for not seeing how my choices affected you, I replied. We've both been stuck in our own narratives. We hugged awkwardly, rusty at showing physical affection, but it was a start. As I prepared to leave, Mom handed me a small package. Open it when you get home, she said. Back in my tiny studio, I unwrapped the package. Inside was a small silver locket, one of Grandma's pieces that hadn't been sold. A tiny photo of our family from years ago, all smiling on a summer vacation, was tucked inside. With it, a note in Mom's handwriting, asterisk some treasures can't be sold. Love, Mom, asterisk. I closed the locket gently, tears welling. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were all finally walking it together, in the light rather than in shadow. 3 months have passed since that explosive family dinner. It's remarkable how a single question, has the money helped, could unravel decades of family dynamics in minutes. Sometimes I wonder if Dad's slip was entirely accidental or if some part of him wanted the truth to finally come out. We haven't discussed that, but he looks more relaxed these days, unburdened. The changes in our family haven't been dramatic or instantaneous. They've come in small moments, in hesitant conversations, in the conscious choice to speak truth, even when silence would be easier. We established weekly family video calls, and we've maintained them faithfully. The first few were awkward. None of us quite knew how to navigate our new commitment to honesty without the buffer of our usual polite evasions. But gradually, we've developed a rhythm. Each person shares one challenge they're facing, no matter how small. No fixing, just listening and supporting. Last week, Dad admitted he was struggling with the idea of selling his business. For the first time, I saw him vulnerable without shame, asking for perspectives rather than presenting decisions already made. Mom shared her fear of returning to teaching after so many years. Jason talked about feeling overwhelmed by impending fatherhood. And I confessed my anxiety about an upcoming job interview, my first serious prospect since the layoff. That's been another significant change. 2 weeks after our family meltdown, I received an unexpected call from one of Dad's business associates who needed someone with financial expertise for a growing tech company in Burlington. I was suspicious at first. Another secret intervention? But Dad swore he hadn't orchestrated it. Sometimes the universe has its own timing. I moved back to Vermont last month. Not to my parents' house, but to a modest apartment 15 minutes away. The job pays less than my Boston position, but the cost of living is dramatically lower, and I'm no longer spending money to maintain appearances I can't afford. My migraines have decreased significantly with the reduction in stress. Mom and I have been rebuilding our relationship slowly. We meet for coffee weekly, just the 2 of us. At first, we stuck to safe topics, but gradually, we've begun discussing deeper issues, her concerns about her marriage, my fears about starting over professionally. She's returned to teaching part-time at the community college, something she's wanted to do for years, but never pursued because of her self-assigned role as family caretaker. I define myself by what I did for everyone else, she told me during one of our dates. I forgot who I was outside of being your mother and Thomas's wife. And I was so determined to be different from you that I didn't recognize when I was making the same mistakes I admitted, just in reverse. I tried so hard to be completely independent that I isolated myself. The family therapy sessions Dad reluctantly agreed to have been surprisingly productive. Dr. Winters, our therapist, identified patterns none of us had recognized. How Dad's need for control and Mom's need to nurture had created a dynamic where honest communication felt dangerous. How Jason and I had internalized those patterns in different ways. Your family operates on unspoken rules, she observed in our third session. The primary one being problems should be solved privately, not discussed openly. That might work for simple issues, but for complex emotional matters, it's disastrous. Dad, to his credit, has been trying. After our fifth session, he pulled me aside. This talking business isn't natural for me, he admitted gruffly. But I'm beginning to see the damage my silence has done. The biggest surprise has been my evolving relationship with Jason. Without the undercurrent of competition and resentment, we've discovered we actually enjoy each other's company. He's been teaching me about the construction business on weekends, and I've been helping him modernize their accounting systems. I always thought you looked down on the family business, he confessed one Saturday as we toured a worksite. And I always thought you resented me for leaving, I replied. I did, he admitted. But not because you left, because you seemed to do it so easily, like staying close to family was somehow less valuable than making it on your own. It wasn't easy, I told him. I was terrified. But I needed to prove something to myself. And did you? He asked. I considered the question. Yes and no. I proved I could survive on my own, but I also learned that independence isn't the same as isolation. Connection isn't weakness. As for the money Mom secretly sent me, we reached a resolution. I didn't pay it back directly, but I've started a special savings account. Part will eventually go toward replacing some of the heirloom jewelry when possible. The rest will be for future family needs, not just my own potential children someday, but a resource for anyone in our family who needs support. Think of it as the Wilson Family Transparency Fund, Jason joked when I explained the concept. Mom's revelation about her own childhood financial trauma has helped me understand her actions better, even if I still don't agree with how she handled things. She grew up with secrets and sudden devastation, so she created more secrets trying to prevent the same for her children. It's a painful reminder that unhealed wounds often become the wounds we inflict on others, even with the best intentions. Dad and Mom are working on their marriage. They've started seeing a couples therapist in addition to our family sessions. Dad moved back into their bedroom last month, a quiet milestone no one directly mentioned, but everyone noticed. They've even started ballroom dancing lessons on Thursday nights, something Mom always wanted to try and Dad always avoided. It's about learning to move together, Mom explained when I expressed surprise at Dad's participation, to communicate without words. For a man of few words, it seems like the perfect metaphor. The most profound lesson I've taken from all of this is the difference between enabling and supporting. Real support respects autonomy and dignity. It comes with honest communication, not secret machinations. It's offering a hand while allowing the other person to decide whether to take it. Mom's secret financial help came from love, but it was enabling rather than truly supportive because it reinforced patterns of dishonesty and pride. True support would have been creating a family environment where I felt safe admitting my struggles without fear of judgment or loss of independence. That's what we're building now. Slowly, imperfectly, but with intention. Last Sunday, at our most recent family dinner, now a genuine monthly tradition rather than an obligation, we used Mom's fancy china again. But this time it wasn't to maintain appearances or pretend perfection. It was a conscious choice to celebrate how far we've come, to honor both our history and our new beginning. As we passed dishes around the table, Dad paused, his fork hovering over his plate. I'm proud of us, he said simply. From a man who once communicated primarily in grunts and nods, it was practically a sonnet. The road to genuine family healing is longer than 3 months, of course. We still stumble. Old patterns emerge under stress. Just last week, I caught myself downplaying a financial concern during our family call, the familiar urge to appear self-sufficient rising automatically. But the difference now is that I recognized it, took a breath, and then told the truth. And my family listened, without trying to fix it, without judgment, offering support without demanding control. Truth, it turns out, is like any other muscle. It strengthens with use. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything, or found yourself caught in patterns of communication handed down through generations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes, knowing we're not alone in our family struggles is the first step toward healing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, healing, and growth. And remember, it's never too late to start building something honest from the ruins of what was broken. Thank you for listening to my story. May your own families find paths to truthful connection, even when that path leads through difficult terrain.